Hey, it's Mr. Sportel, and we are going to talk about some subtracting mixed numbers with regrouping. Just to be honest, I think this is one of the more difficult things that we do in math in fifth grade. So I'm going to go ahead and give a couple of examples here, and if there's any confusion, please let me know how I can help. So let's go ahead and we'll start with 6 and 5 ninths minus 2 and 7 ninths. So automatically we see here that the issue is that the numerator in this number is larger than the numerator in this number. That means we can't subtract. So we have to borrow or regroup from our whole number. So we need to take one whole from our whole number. And what we do with that whole is we are going to turn it into a fraction so that we can make this numerator larger, basically. Now here's where students can get tripped up. This whole has to equal a fraction. Every time that we borrow from the whole number, the denominator needs to be the same as the denominator in our fraction of our mixed number. So that means our denominator needs to be 9, because if we remember, to add fractions, our denominators need to be the same. So for the whole to be, or I'm sorry, for the fraction to be equal to 1, the numerator needs to be the same as the denominator. If you're visual like me, you can just go ahead and think about it as 9 sections shaded in, right? You would have 9 over 9. That would equal one whole in the visual and right here. So what we are going to do with this 9 over 9 is, obviously, since this numerator is too small, we want to make it larger. So we are going to add that 9 ninths to that 5 ninths and get 14 ninths. Now, some of you might say this is an improper fraction, we need to change it. No, we don't want to do that because we're going to be subtracting from it anyway. So what I need to do is now I need to rewrite my mixed number. This is no longer 6 and 5 ninths. I've borrowed the whole from that 6. I've turned it into a fraction and I've added it to my numerator. So I'm going to rewrite this now as 5, because we took that 1 from 6, and 14 ninths minus 2 and 7 ninths. Now, our numerator here is larger, and we still have the same denominator, so we're going to follow the steps of just subtracting mixed numbers with regular same denominators. We're going to subtract our fractions first, 14 ninths minus 7 ninths, and that'll get us 7 ninths. And then we are going to go ahead and subtract our whole numbers. 5 minus 2 is obviously 3, and we're going to bring this over here for 3 and 7 ninths. So let's take a look at another one, because this can be kind of difficult. So we've got 5 and 2/5 minus 2 and 4/5. Again, we see the issue that this numerator is larger than this one, which means we cannot subtract these two. I need to borrow a whole from my whole number, and that whole is going to need to equal a fraction that has a 5 in the denominator, because if we remember, we need to add these together, right? So the numerator, to be equal to 1, needs to be the same as the denominator. If we remember our visual, I would be shading in 5 parts here, and that would equal my whole, right? So now, since the issue was that our numerator was too small here, we need to add 2/5 plus the 1 that we borrowed, 5/5. And that's going to equal 7/5. Again, we're going to get an improper fraction, or a fraction greater than 1. We should not worry about that, however, because we are going to be subtracting. I'm going to rewrite my mixed number. If we remember, I took 1 from 5, so it's become 4 now. And we know that 2/5, plus that 5/5 is going to get me 7/5. I'm going to just go ahead and rewrite this. Again, just like when I subtract any mixed number, I'm going to start with the fractions. 7 fifths minus 4 fifths is going to get me 3 fifths. And then I'm going to come and subtract my whole numbers. 4 minus 2, 2. Bring this fraction over, 2 and 3 fifths. And then the one last thing I'm going to show us is sometimes we'll have just a whole number minus a mixed number, right? So we have 4 and minus 2 and 1/8. Again, we're going to do the same basic concept here. We are going to borrow from our whole number and then turn that whole number that we borrowed into a fraction. So we're going to borrow 1, right? We see here that the denominator is 8. So we don't want to make this too difficult on ourselves. We want to make a fraction that has the same denominator because we know we have to have those to subtract. So we're just going to turn this 1 into 8 over 8, right? Again, 1, 2, it would just be like this, right? Obviously, if you have 8 parts and they're all shaded in, you have a whole. And so I'm going to rewrite this whole number as 3 and 8 eighths, right? This is equivalent to 4. It just is a mixed number now. 3 wholes, 8 over 8 equals 1. And then I'm going to just minus 2 and 1/8. We start with our fractions. 8 over 8 minus 1 over 8. We'll get us 7/8. And then we subtract our whole numbers. 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. And then I'm going to just bring that 7/8 right over here for an answer of 1 and 7/8. Again, like I said earlier, this is one of the more complicated things that we do, I think one of, if not the most, in 5th grade. So this topic or this concept bears a lot of practice. So hope this helped.